So,
I mean, I think it'll be a good investment for the building, and the next phase will be to put some
You're wasting the building.
siding on the outside of it and get it as a functional facility.
Anything else, Hugh, beyond what the mayor shared? Any questions anyone have for Bill Inspector or the mayor on that? We have our bid there received from Thaddeus August House Movers, $5,500. We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve $5,500 for the August House Movers to take care of the salt.
We have a second on that motion.
I second.
Any other discussion?
These funds will come from the coal severance fund.
We just got a new check for slightly over that amount was the contract. So we got money in to cover that. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed no. And now we're back to Scott to the new truck.
That's the one we need.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. He has our paperwork. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had two bids. One was for a Hino that was about 5,000 or 6,000 more than what was in 2,000 more. And so you've got a bid for the lower one from for a Freightliner, 20 cubic yard. And the description of it, Allison transmission, Cummins diesel, and pictures. So any questions for Scott on this? And this is a pursue, enter the agreements and get it started. It's take what, 9 months?
They came down, they said 60 to 90 days for the truck to be delivered to their factory, and then it's 124 days roughly for the new way to come back in on it.
And then we would assume payments when we receive the truck, right? And then those are
When is our other truck paid off?
just
You know, one more year, it's just run out this year.
it finishes this
This
fiscal.
one I was paid off at the end of June,
Okay.
I think in June or July. That was on our paperwork last week.
It'll be paid off by the time this one comes in.
Yes.
You know, what I would recommend is if we're still holding well on the budget, when we set the budget for next year, instead of carrying money over, I would recommend that we just go ahead and pay the money, pay the truck outright. It's going to cost 5 to 6% minimum to finance it, and we're only earning 2.25% interest on the money, so we would be losing money by financing it. We have a little bit of money set up for capital improvements and stuff now, so it'd be, I think it's more prudent to pay it all, get that debt off our back.
So that would be wise to look at when we get there. And we have some time, and tonight is just approving the purchase, which means starts the contract so they can order and start building the truck for us.
We have that Cobra change
Yeah, I
to
like that
Bulldog.
whole snake.
Wow, I
You
changed
want me
to
that snake?
Bulldog.
I like that snake.
We were, I was talking to Aaron the other day about the Bulldog's back on the side of the truck. We gotta come up with a picture of what Bulldog we want. He says, I've got 900 of them, which one do you want?
I like the Cobra, but we're a Bulldog. We'll have that on there.
Do we have a motion to approve this purchase of a new garbage truck? With or without a Cobra picture?
With or without snake. I make a motion to approve, to buy a refuse truck for $131,063 from West Virginia Trucking Company.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
We'll have a second.
Any other discussion? Any questions from other council members, since this is a very large purchase? Even though we do about it, it's expected, but any questions from other council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you, Scott. We have one, and we'll get to the clerk's report in a little bit. We have a request from the Firemen's Civil Service Commission to request a reconsideration. Last meeting, we worked on our language because it was worded without us realizing it that the new fireman would be 40 hours only for his probation period, which is a whole year. So we amended it to 40 hours until he was ready for shift work. But the Civil Service Commission has contacted us and given, you get my papers here, they've given some explanation and request. we're running into some troubles as far as getting proper hiree in our time, so I'm not sure if it's Chief, do you want to present or someone from the Civil Service Commission? We got two, is your third member here or just two?
They've asked me to talk to them.
Okay,
Just two
and
hands
share and then we can ask questions.
Man, I'll speak.
I have met with them a couple times, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna try to keep it simple, but I've got something to give you all that's gonna show you why the hours have always been, up until the last two hires. When you hire somebody, we've always worked on a 60-hour work week, straight days until we get that. Part of that is when you hire a firefighter, you're actually hiring a shift guy that's 24 hours that equates to 60-hour work weeks. There is no 40-hour position. There's no such thing. So we typically put them on 60-hour straight days. And depending on who you hire and their qualifications when they walk in the door, that can be 3 months, it can fluctuate. So what I did is I broke down at their request the training hours to get someone that comes in the door ready to go on to shift, to be useful to the department and to the city, however, yet not released as a full firefighter, so overtime still has to be covered until they're, what we typically do at the 6-month mark. We test them after they've been on shift a few months, we test them, make sure they're ready to do the job. We release them at that point, and then the overtime costs go away. But until that time happens, the overtime is still being paid in the event there's a vacation on the shift that particular new firefighter is on. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to give you here breaks it down a little bit in the hours, and this is considering, again, it depends on the candidate. When we had our meeting last time, I met with the mayor afterwards. And we had a choice of some candidates, and it depends really on what they walk in. And so what I've done is give you worst case scenario, which is the exact scenario we find ourselves in today. Of a candidate with no training, no qualifications, no experience, no nothing, which will take the longest amount of time to get ready before the city is seeing it. And I'm gonna break it down, I'll talk you guys through it, and hopefully it'll make some sense real quick. And at the very bottom of this, just before you get there, I'll explain that here in a minute, what I'm talking about and what I think. And again, these are just fluctuates a little bit.
Chris, an example would be like, hiring somebody who has never right out of high school, coming on, and then compare that hiring somebody that maybe been a volunteer fireman at a station. Right? So the one will have a little bit more experience than the other.
Yeah, it depends.
Right,
Okay, up until, I can only speak for the, I think I just gave my copy away. I can only speak for the last 23 years. We have always done it at 60-hour time. We've always done that 60, but the last two hires that we made
was good. People that had
we made a decision and we worked them at 50 hours because they were already qualified, 90% or more when they walked in, so they were a quicker benefit to the city. And it reduced the overtime cost. But we didn't have a cap of overtime, so they were still put on special assignments, they were still put on training. So their hourly rate, their base pay that they were advertised, they were hired under was still met. So we didn't run into a legality there. But walking through this real quick, the very top up there is that first classroom hours of 366. That's required by the state. Technically, before I can let a firefighter show up on the scene of any incident, any emergency incident. Now they can go, they can sit in the truck, but I can't let them get out and do anything. The state limits us to that. With the exception of the EMT. That's a departmental and requirement. But the rest of that is required by the state now. Once they get that, and all that has to be taught, and part of last year's budget and training, remember, I put the guys through certification to get trained to be instructors. So starting this year, we're not farming that out, all that will be done in-house. We're good here. And we can get it done a little quicker than we used to. The local fire department training, we teach these people to know the streets, where they're going, and to know the fire hydrants where they're at, the trucks and equipment. Every morning, that's how they start, 7 a.m., checking equipment. All this is in a syllabus that we've developed over the course of time. Very well laid out plan of how we train them on each individual thing when they come in. Putting all that together, and again, I'm estimating 100 hours. 100 hours is give or take. Some people learn faster than others. So if we're looking at 300 hours, and that's not including, I show you there, I'm sorry, a total of 700 hours before they're of any benefit to you or me or anybody else. JATC is not included. That's the apprenticeship program they're enrolled in when they get hired. That's 2,000 hours of training per year that they have to do. I didn't include that because that would take hours to explain. That's not included in this minimum thing here. So going off of this, again, for someone you hired that has no experience. Realistically, down below that, I took 8-hour days and I took the 12-hour days that we normally use. You're not going to get 8 hours of training out of an 8-hour day. You're not going to get 12 hours of training out of a 12-hour day. Realistically, that's a lunch period. If we get a house fire or something like that, we're gone for hours. Some days you might get 12, some days you might get 6. So averaging it out. I broke it down for you there. At the 8-hour, 40-hour work week, I'm confident in saying 24 weeks or 6 months to get them to where they're any use whatsoever before I can put them on shift. They'll be working straight days for that length of time. Versus the 60-hour work week, it cuts us down to 3.5 months. That's substantial. And the reason that's substantial is because they're right down below. I took an average hourly rate in my department, and all the officers that are working the overtime. Some are a little higher than this figure I gave you. Some are lower. Using in the middle there, you see the cost per shift. And on the shift it's short. There's 3 guys there. When you add their vacations together, which will start here in June, July sometime, and it'll be even heavier in October, November, December. $13,000 cost just to cover those vacations on that one shift alone that we're running short, which is why our budget, you see it already reflected in the last several months of running short through a heavy vacation cycle. It doesn't take long at $4,800 average, below our budget out. So down below that, what I'm showing you is the 40-hour cost at 6 months and the 60-hour cost at 3 months. Those two together, that $229 difference doesn't seem like much, but if you're going to do 40 hours, if we try to do a 40-hour, you have to start adding back in that potential vacation cost to cover the overtime. So now, and I couldn't give you a number because it's hypothetical. I don't know when you guys are going to take vacation, but I can say safely that the longer this goes on, the more apt we are to get into vacation. More apt we are to start paying these overtime costs again. So the $10,000 there that I'm showing you in 6 months, sometime within that 6 months, part of that, $13,000 will be also spent by the city on overtime costs. Now, if you do a guy at 3 months on the 60-hour, at 6 months, it should be released to work, and the city would not be covering overtime costs for that anymore, that person. So I'm trying to tell you that in my eyes, everything that I look at, the training requirements and the cost to the city, it's going to cost you more you're gonna save them, but it's gonna cost the city actually more in the long run as we get, at the cost of we're paying to cover it. And we're already at minimums, so I can't just say, well, we won't cover it, but shit, I'm already at the minimums, I don't have any flavor. So, and I know not everybody understands our training requirements and how and all that plays into our mind and our syllabus and how we do our training. Again, we did a 50-hour last time. Last hire that the city made, we did a 50-hour. When that guy came in the door, he had everything except EVD. So all I had to do was we had to go through training him on the city hydrants, because they didn't know where he was going, he didn't know what was on the truck, he didn't know any of that. And even at that, it still took us, Jason, 4 months? It still took us 4 months on him to get him released from where he came out in. Get him on the shift and get work. So it's going to depend on each guy. Even the most trained guy at the state level could walk in, could walk in the door and have all these state requirements and still struggle with streets and hydrants. Or you can hire someone and they come in and pick it up like that. Either way, going to 50 hours even put us at 4 months last time. So it didn't prove to be as beneficial for the public. It still takes, no matter how you shake it, it still takes months and months to get equipment and get the streets and the maps and get these people to know where they're going. They're doing good releasing them if you put them in a truck, you know, and they don't know the city. And when we test it, we test maps, we test every street in the city, we get addresses. We run them through scenarios, it's very elaborate. Last thing I want to do is send somebody out there that doesn't know where they're going or what they're doing. So hopefully that puts a little bit of clarity, but I'll answer any questions you have on that. The flip side, the other side that the commission had concerns about, I met with them and I talked to them about it. It's in the hours that are worked. When you hire a firefighter, you're actually hiring somebody that works 2,080 hours at regular time. They work 848 overtime hours a year. And they have, because of the way their work schedule falls, and that's divided out. They have holiday pay that plays into that too, overtime rates. And that is what creates the base salary. That's what creates the union wage negotiation hourly rate. Which is how we get to our base salaries. And what it breaks down to is 2,928 hours of actual work. Holidays not included. Just regular time work stuff. Breaks down to 244 hours a month, 61 hours a week. It's actually 60 point something. So 60, 61 hours a week is what you're actually hiring, which is traditionally what we stuck with. Now, one of the commission's concerns, broken down by pays. The way we get paid, because of the way we work, you actually get 3 paychecks in a cycle. You get 80 regular, 40 over, then an 80 regular, 40 over, and then an 80 regular and 16 over. The way the cycle then starts over. That generates an annual base rate. Then again, we take that hourly rate, break it back down, working 60 hours on days instead of on shift. Same amount of money. That's what you would. When someone gets hired, I can put them on shift day one. But they don't know what to do. So working on the days, we train them properly, we get it done. Benefits the city and overtime costs, benefits the commodity that way. The way that we are set up as of the last meeting is a huge difference of $17,000 in pay if we had to keep that person on probation for a year. That's worst case scenario, absolutely worst. It's a huge pay difference, which I think had the commission concerned. It's a concern without a view. The biggest concern is I think we're going to struggle trying to get somebody to come to work at $23,000 a year for that is going to be difficult. We'll see. But more importantly, it's a huge difference, I think. And they'd have to speak to us. All I'm doing is giving you facts. It's a huge difference from what we advertise and what we're trying to feel. And again, that's why I wanted to make sure and show you how it has to work as far as training before we can do anything with it. The only option that I did not put on the page here is putting the guy on shift day one that he shows up for work, which is technically what you hired as a shift worker. But that would mean 1 year. It would take us a year. If he's only there for 30 days, it would take us a very long time to get required training in before he'd be able to benefit to the city and we wouldn't be paying out all his overtime costs. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit.
And quickly, we wanted to work through this quickly. Commissioner Moyer and August, anything else you need to add?
Yes, sir. It would be, just the commission's stance, as the chief alluded to, in 2017, there was an advertisement post to test and hire probationary firefighter at the pay rate of $39,155. If you take into account the contractual agreements in the year of 2018 that the city negotiated and went through with the fire department, as well as previous hire under the same contract and the same advertisement working at a 50-hour rate, the closest number we could come to on a 40-hour cap was still $10,000 less than what is advertised. So the commission stance would only be to ensure that the next person hired is compensated fairly under contract and by agreement with the city going forward. And so it'd be our suggestion that we find a middle ground on losing the cap of 40 hours.
Okay. So we'll take a few moments for questions. Anyone here have questions for the chief or either commissioner about this? And we all understand what we did, and appears like we probably muddied the water instead of clarifying the water last time.
I apologize.
Well, if we'd had this information last time, we wouldn't have possibly made that decision.
I didn't have it.
Well,
What
are you actually asking?
My question is your
Yeah. What are you actually asking?
Let me put words in your mouth and correct me if I'm wrong, but as what I'm understanding is we, without realizing we restricted where it's going to take a lot longer to get somebody trained and harder to entice somebody to work at that low rate for a long period. So you're asking we back off the 40 and allow you all to do what you've done in the past. Your practice is 50 to 60, depending on the qualifications of the guy.
I think that's the best course of action that saves the city most amount of money and provides us with a trained person a lot quicker. So I think that's the best solution, is to remove the limit of hours. Well, again, there's nothing I can do as a fire chief. I can't change their pay. I can't do anything. I can't do that. It's there. So, and as long as I'm working them 60 hours, it doesn't matter whether it's a shift or straight days. The days option benefits the city in extended overtime costs, and it benefits us in getting them trained quicker.
So we've got two situations going on as well. You've got one that the longer, if we restrict it to 8-hour shifts, it's going to take longer to train, which means we're paying one of these guys overtime during all that time, which costs the taxpayer more.
Well, you're paying $20.25 an hour
Versus
versus $11.45.
And the practical side is when we go to recruit from conversations is if you are only working 40 hours a week at 11 something an hour for that extended period, it's hard to recruit because everybody is paying more. Is that practical?
My opinion.
Okay.
We would be the only department that I'm aware of that does that.
Any other?
It's just my opinion.
Any questions?
I'm sorry.
What is your final request? What is it?
I would like you guys to amend and remove the no overtime clause from that. Let me work.
So you're asking for 40/20?
Hmm?
You're asking for 40/20?
At least give them the 60 hours, at least let the person work the 60 hours. The other problem we run into is the EMT class. The EMT class is something we cannot, as of this moment, teach in-house. So we're gonna have to send them to that.
Do they do it on the computer?
They can, there is a blended learning. It costs a little more, but it's a blended learning. But what I run into is there's still some class stuff they have to go to. So if you put any kind of cap the EMT class is gonna require me sending them, they have some Saturday classes, some Sunday. So there's a little bit of overtime for that training purpose, not for working purpose, but for that training purpose. So that's something to consider. If it was amended to just approve the higher probationary firefighter, that's good. You know, I can't, obviously, I can't do anything that's going to cost more than what you guys approved, so. And you guys have approved the hourly rate. It's 60 hours a week. On shift or
Questions at all for them? Tom?
Yeah. So do we think that, does this person will understand that they have 3.5 months approximately to be able to possibly be turned into shift?
Yeah, I will say that the candidate, the current candidate, I should say, I apologize. The current candidate I have met with, and I sit down and explain the work schedule. And, of course, at the time I was looking at a different work schedule than when I would be in the 60s. All that is explained up front, you know, before we go in to spend any more money or do anything else, I explained all that. Deputy Chief Berger was there with me when we talked with him. He left in a positive way. Called back an hour later and he doesn't seem interested in the job. Wishy-washy. I have talked to him since then, and I cannot get a commitment out of him, but what I had to do, we have scheduled a physical and psychological test for the end of the month, 27th, 28th of this month. I've made him aware that he has to be there, there's 2 things. And I've talked to him Wednesday, asking him to call me, because we need to know. We need to know. The mayor needs to know something. Somebody needs to know something. He got back with me via text message. Saturday and said he had something going on and he'd get back to me. I haven't heard anything since. I can't get him to return my calls, voicemails, anything. So
These policies would apply even if that guy fails.
I don't know where we're at with it. I'm not sure. I don't know where we stand.
I'm just saying, in general, you can't control anyone, but in general, you think there's a possibility they can be done in 3.5 to 4 months, not in the 6-month time period, if we go with the 50 or 60.
I can't guarantee that, but there's a huge, based on past history, there's at least a 90% chance to do that. Based on the last 20 years,
Then the next question is, I can't imagine that y'all don't have a calendar and everybody knows when their vacations are throughout the year.
whether unscheduled. In January, we
Do y'all not
started over.
start talking about it sometime soon? Like, do you put a calendar up and Susie picks one day and Johnny picks another week and, you know?
But as of this point, what I'm telling you is not much scheduled.
Okay.
They have to schedule.
Do you have a time frame that you expect them to kind of plug, decide?
They don't have a limit, they schedule all the way
We need to come back another time on that, because we're still on time.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this negotiating committee, meet with the fire department and their committee. And let's get a dollar amount, exactly what they need to bring it back to council.
We've already got the dollar amount. We've already got the dollar amount. We can't reopen negotiations and contract.
That's what I'm asking.
I'm not-
It's all right, I'll get ready.
I'm not making a motion, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying.
That's not valid. Yeah, that's not valid.
Okay.
So we either need to do nothing, leave it the way it is, or make a correction to let them hire the way they have in the past.
Yes.
Commissioner Moyer, Moyer, is that correct?
I think there's 2 things here that we need to realize. One thing is, as the chief said, the quicker we get the guy trained, the city's saving money. But on the other hand, the city's also safe. We have a full complement of firemen. We do not have to send them out there solely fatigued from working extended hours, guys, trust me. That's tough on these guys. So if we can take this 2-edged sword and make it work, I think the faster we do it and we get the guy hired at the rate that we promised, or at least we advertise, plus we help our fire department, plus we help our city. So, you know, to me, it's kind of a win-win situation for us. You know, being represented for the city, I think in the long run, this will save some money. You know. That's my thoughts.
And Councilman Flushman had a comment.
Yes. And I'm the one who originally made the motion at the last council meeting. My thoughts were
and I discussed it with the mayor today, that he was put on a 40-hour work week until he was certified to go on shift. But I thought the hourly rate would be changed to compensate for the
Which
loss
we
of
can't do that
hours.
either with the contract.
Right, but I didn't even assume that because we had no, like Connie said, we had none of this information handed to us. Or I would have never made that motion. But what the mayor is asking for, he wants the chief to tell him a number of hours, period.
Yeah, just tell us what you want so we can vote on it.
Right.
And get moving on so we can get.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Fox.
I think the bigger argument is just the amount of money that the gentleman that is hired is going to lose. And I believe that your only solution would be so that he doesn't lose at minimum $10,000 if it takes only 6 months to be put on shift throughout training. You're looking at a $10,000 difference in a gap in pay. If you increase it to what the chief is saying, that, you know, past practice with somebody that has absolutely no experience, and I agree with Mr. Berger here, who, I mean, he lists all of these classes out, classroom hours of 366. I can tell you I've had every class one that except for one, and those are realistic hours. Those are the amount of times that it takes to go through that coursework. So if you allow the chief to go back to the 60-hour with someone that has no experience, no training at all, to be completely trained in a 3 to 4 month period, that would also allow him to be compensated at the $41,000 that was advertised and agreed on contractually.
Okay, I'm going to call with time. I'm going to call for us to actually for a motion if someone would present it for to go back. And again, the other three of you on this one to step up because I'm the chair to decide you want a motion to allow at least the 50, or do you want to just make it to the not to exceed 60 like the contract allows if that's needed. That gives the chief the flexibility if they only need 50 to do that. But I'll have to ask one of you all to make that call.
I'll make a motion to allow the probationary firefighter to go to the 60-hour work week that the chief deems necessary,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed 60 hours.
You understand?
What?
Like, again, the EMT class, wait $30 days. I think the problem here, I don't know how else to say it.
Is 60 acceptable or not?
Nobody, I've never seen a scenario where we're putting a cap on how many hours it takes to get them in there.
In that 60 hours in a week, you can't get them into an EMT class?
I can't, if I'm training them on everything else, and that class is in the evening, it'll be all the time. As long as you all understand the training, that basically some overtime and training, that's what I'm worried about.
I think the cap on.
So now that we need 70 hours, we're gonna need 80 hours.
I think the cap on the overtime is what is the issue. The 60-hour work week would be what is normalized for these guys in normal training. When you cap the overtime, that then allows them not to attend the outside training that they need to that's not in-house. So I think the cap is what's getting kind of muddy with it.
I've never
So
worked,
are they going to work 80 hours, or are they work 100? How do they know how many hours they're going to work? I'm just asking.
It's a
Why is it
60,
normal?
from what we have been told and understand, it's a normalized 60 hours. But there has never been a cap in case, you know, 1 week they may need to go back and have an extra 10 or 15 hours on a certain item.
So you need 60 hours without no overtime cap?
That's what we're, yes, that's.
at least for the purposes of training, I don't need to work on shift, I don't need to work overtime with them, just training.
So we have motion out there.
I'll amend the motion to say 60 hours of training.
I'm just make sure everybody's clear, because that's still going to put us back to some of the discussion that if they have to go 1 week, maybe 56, and the other maybe 64, they balance out, but that 1 week we put them over. I'm just trying to get us to work this out in the next 5 minutes.
I mean, do you want me to suggest 80 hours a week?
No.
60 hours, no overtime cap.
Right. 60 hours,
No overtime cap.
There you go.
which they're promising they wouldn't be abusing that, I take that,
Well, I'm just saying, or.
but that way that they're not hamstrung.
He wouldn't be on shift working anyway. Or at least not,
12-hour days?
yeah, at least for that first 3 months or whatever. 3 months.
Okay,
The point is, they won't be covering overtime for somebody else's office.
If there is any overtime, it would be for training.
Yes, the only thing that would be beyond the 60, training purposes. But I can't tell you whether that's 3 hours, 10 hours, I can't tell you. Depends on the
okay, I'll make a motion to allow the fire chief to train the probationary fireman for 60 hours with no cap on overtime, but the overtime will be dedicated to training.
Does it sound fair to both parties? So it's out there, we need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so that's, an average, meaning they're allowed an average of 60 hours, but if there is a class that draws overtime beyond, 60 is overtime, but you know what I'm saying, beyond the 60, they can take the class, they're not gonna be hamstrung. So we have a motion, we have a second, any other discussion? Any questions from other council members? It's not open to the public, they're council members or commissioners.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this should be a week. 60 hours a week, no cap on overtime.
That's correct, yes.
No cap on overtime,
A week.
a week,
Okay.
Yeah, just so we're clear on the pay period.
and it's, overtime will be dedicated to training.
Right, a week.
Okay, if there's no objection, and we just go ahead and handle this administratively now,
Yes, please.
and not drag it out any further.
Yeah, question though, we can vote on for our purposes, but it's not on the agenda for full council, and yet we passed it last week with that, or 2 weeks ago with that restriction. So Counselor, where do we stand on that? And if we make the adjustment here tonight, but the full council voted on a 40-hour restriction, but it's not on the agenda for full council. Okay. You said that.
With an emergency,
I
I
don't know that that qualifies as emergency.
well, we're gonna lose this employee if we don't.
If it's an emergency, then certainly you can do it. I just don't.
Does that meet the state? I'm for it, but I just want to be safe. Does that meet the state threshold of what they consider emergency items to add to an agenda?
Whatever we deem.
Emergency, I mean.
I'm just trying to make sure that we get out of here without jail.
Can the civil service board do us a favor?
Sir.
Next time you negotiate the contract, clarify this.
Yes, sir. I've actually spoken with TW, who is the union president, and he is informed and in agreement that there needs to be clarification in probationary firefighters as well as how their shifts operate.
Let's call a vote so we can get this done. Run out of time. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Okay, we need quickly a vote to recommend adding this as an emergency item to the full council agenda.
I make a motion to add this as an emergency item to forward.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Quickly, you had your short budget last meeting that was not finalized. We met very thoroughly. We have a finalized version now, which is basically no change.
Yes.
So you've got your sales tax update, and your cash balances.
Yeah, I handed out the seal.
So thank you.
And also give you in your package, cash flow,
Yes.
receipts, and expenses.
Any questions for the clerk? I apologize to her with her time restraints. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Don't forget.